To this webinar, and I'd especially like to thank the many parents who took the time to write in their questions, and there's so many of them that I'm surely won't be able to get to them all, but I hope I can generalize enough on the answers that it will prove useful to everyone who has written in, and we certainly promise you that we will do this again. So if we don't get to your question, please persist, and we will certainly come back and do so in the future. Well, we're sitting here at the Institutes for the Achievement of Human Potential, and I'd like to begin with questions that are pretty general, so the answers will be helpful to many, many people. A mother writes, my understanding is that my child's input pathways are broken. To check auditory functioning, I tested his hearing using an air horn, and he did not startle, but barely gave me a look. Second time I blew the horn, he did not even look at me. He did not give me much response to loud noise, but he responds immediately to very low sounds. Looks like he's tuning out all the sounds and noise which he's not interested in. Maybe he's tuning out all of us when we're talking and losing opportunities to build his language. Over here, how can we work on his auditory pathways? Well, you know, this is such a big question. For the children generally who are diagnosed as autistic, they do have very significant sensory problems, not only auditory problems, but visual problems, tactile problems, sometimes even problems of taste and smell that are significant. And these are the problems that make these kids look so odd. These are the problems that make their behavior so unpredictable and sometimes so inappropriate. Let's look just at the auditory pathway, because that one can be a very large area of misunderstanding. Mother is describing her child who is very hyper auditory. It means he hears too well. He hears sounds that you and I don't hear at all. He hears sounds that you and I hear, but maybe the magnitude is going to be much greater. We cannot imagine what it's like to live in this child's shoes. We cannot imagine it. And because we cannot, we misunderstand this child tremendously. Now, this is a symptom of brain injury. We can't just look at the symptom, which is the auditory pathway, and focus just on that. We have to focus on the big picture with this child. So the very first thing we would do with this child is to look at his physiology, because this group of children, they have very big problems in the gut, and those gut problems create very big problems of irritation in the brain. There's a very strong connection between the health and happiness of the gut and the health and happiness in the brain. So we have no choice. When this kid comes to us, if this child appeared tomorrow, yes, we want to do stuff, we want to do things about that auditory pathway. But the first thing we're going to do is try to calm down the system, make his physiology better, make his gut better, make his brain better. Then we're going to see that auditory sensitivity, all those sensory pathways are going to quiet down to some degree. So that first step with these kids would be to get rid of those things which we know are a big problem. First thing, stop all wheat. Second thing, stop all dairy. These two we would take out, we would never put them back. These two things affect the child's brain negatively. So we would take them out, we would never put them back. We would look at the environment of these kids because they're very likely to be allergic to things in their environment, and this makes the gut unhappy, it makes the brain unhappy. So if they're living in a city or an area that's polluted, we're going to provide them with an environment where we are purifying the air. So for this kid, we would get a full HEPA air filtration. So at night when he's sleeping, he's in that environment. By day when he's doing his program, he's in that environment. No, we would not open the windows to get fresh air because there isn't fresh air in a city anymore. Fresh air is an old-fashioned idea. It only exists in very few places in the world now. Most of the places where our children live, there is no fresh air. So we would do very basic things like making sure the air he is breathing is clean. We would make sure the water he is drinking is clean and pure. And most especially the water he's bathing in or showering in is clean. Chlorine is a big, big factor for these kids. So we want to make sure that he's not sitting in a bathtub full of chlorinated water. He's not showering in chlorinated water, that we've removed that chlorine. So yes, it's costly to get a HEPA air filter. It's costly to get a high quality water purification. But in the end, prevention is perhaps the cheapest treatment there is in the world. So for this child, those are basic things we would start with. We'd look at anything in the environment that might be an irritant for him. We'd make sure he has a new pillow that can be washed. Any of his bedding should be washable and should be washed often. We don't want him breathing in from an old pillow. This could make a big difference. We should make sure the environment he's living in is free of dust, and most especially free of mold. These are all the things we're going to do to calm down the system, because right now he's living in a world where everything irritates him. Everything. Now, the auditory pathway. What could we do to make this particular child's life a little better? Well, one thing you can do is give him some downtime from those noises that are bothering him all the time. You can do this with noise cancellation headphones, and we would use them maybe an hour on, an hour off to give him a break from all that noise. You can simply use the most comfortable earplugs you can find. And you can put one in the right ear, let the left ear open, and then switch them. You can put them in for a little bit in both ears. Again, mostly these kids don't tolerate headphones and earplugs very well, but if you just work up step by step on a gradient, you can get them to. And when they realize how much better the quality of their life is when they have those noise cancellation headphones, this goes a long way. So these are some things we would do to begin with this child. Of course, a child like this would be put here, if he were at the institutes, would be put on a full neurological program. It would include a physical program. It would include a physiological program. It would include an intellectual program. But I just want to give this mother some insight into a place where she can begin, and just beginning with the physiology, with the environment, the air, the food, the water. This could make a big difference for her child. How many days does a parent need to commit to the program? Well, you know, there's so many ways to answer this question, but we played with this 50 years ago. Some kids did the program 1 day a week, some kids did it 3 days, some kids did it 5 days. And we found very rapidly that children understand something that they do every day. That the kids who did their program every day stuck with it. And every day they got a little bit better than they were the day before. And they knew that. So they accepted it. When we tried to start and stop the program, 5 days on, weekends off, 1 day on, 1 day off, all the variations you can think of. As soon as we returned to the program, we would get an argument or a protest from the kid. So we learned very quickly that a small program done every day is superior to a gigantic program that starts and stops and starts and stops. So here's what we would recommend. Take the most modest program, half-hour a day, and say, we're going to do this every day, 7 days a week, week in and week out. That way, if you do that, you're going to wake up in 2 months, probably sooner, and you're going to say, first of all, we can do more in that half hour now than we could do before. We're getting twice as much done. And he's pretty good at this. We could do a little more. And as it inches up a little bit, you start to see the change in your child. And when you see the change in your child, well, that's everything. So that's our best advice. Mother also asked, also on an average, how many years does a parent need to spend on the program? Well, I have no way to answer that. I have no crystal ball. And we don't even know the answer because so many parents begin their program before they ever come here. A very significant number of our families, even after they stop coming here, they continue the program. So that one's pretty hard to answer. So that's the best answer I can give you. And in a sense, maybe I would say to you, since I don't have a crystal ball and you don't, I'm guessing, maybe you should say, let's put a dot on the calendar. Or maybe your dot is 6 months from now. Maybe your dot is 12 months from now. Wherever you feel comfortable to put that dot. And say, well, we're going to do the absolute maximum we can do in that time period. And then on that day, we're going to stop and we're going to take stock and say, now, has it been worth it? Is our kid better? Is he clearly better? Because if he is clearly better, there's a very good chance you're going to extend that dot. And if he's not better, then I think you have every right to say, well, the institutes, they're sweet people, they're good people, but my kid isn't changing fast enough. We need to find smarter people. That's my best advice. Mom says our child's motor function is okay. He's walking and running. They don't look awkward, but he can't run as fast as his peers. Also, he cannot do brachiation very well. What do you suggest? Well, as a principle, when your child is struggling to do something as well as he should do it, there are two basic things you do. One is go to an earlier level and strengthen it. So if his running is not great, have him walk longer distances. Do more walking and do walking and running, walking and running, walking and running. And of course, increase his opportunity to run, make it very consistent, and build up very gradually. That may help you a lot. As for brachiation, again, I would refer you to our books on brachiation so you can see a gradient approach. Very often when parents begin brachiation, they don't follow a gradient. They expect the kid to go up on the ladder and start brachiating, and you need to hang, build up the strength in the upper body a little bit, and then once a kid can do that, offer him the correct support so that he can begin to brachiate with help, and then withdraw that support very, very gradually. So take a look at what we've written on this, and it may help you a lot. Mom says, we started creeping and crawling some time ago. We're chasing a target of 1,600 yards of creeping and 400 yards of crawling. Right now, he's creeping about 600 yards and 80 yards of crawling per day, divided into 6 sessions of creeping and crawling. I plan to increase 5 to 10 yards per session every week. That's excellent. During the first half of the day, we do creeping, then we do crawling. Is it recommended to mix or alternate creeping and crawling sessions for the day? Definitely, we would recommend mixing them. Creeping is much easier than crawling. So if you did all the crawling together, and if you did it especially at the end of the day rather than the beginning, I think that'd be tough. So much better to do a little creeping, a little crawling, a little creeping, a little crawling. Mother says, our child has started brachiation. How much brachiation would you recommend for an 8-year-old? And Mom says he's 52 pounds. Well, this one's a hard one to answer. And I'm almost reluctant to give an amount because the most important thing is if your child has started brachiating, once a kid gets to be a good brachiator, he often will want to brachiate a lot. And that's a good thing. We have kids who, any free moment, they're up brachiating. That's a good thing. As long as in the beginning of that process, we did not allow them to brachiate too much. And when I say too much, I mean enough so that their hands break down. A good brachiator has beautiful hard calluses across the palm, but you have to build those gradually. And if a kid gets over enthusiastic and goes up there, the hands get hot and the calluses break down, and then you get blisters and that's a problem. So what I would say to you is make sure your child doesn't brachiate too much at one time. And once he has those beautiful calluses, then he's pretty safe to be up there brachiating as much as he wants. And the more he brachiates, the better that will be for him, for sure. Mom says, I've attended the What to Do course in October. I started the program in November, and I'm seeing slow improvement in understanding, 1 to 2 words of communication, and improvement in running and crawling. Any suggestion to make the process even faster? Well, I want to start right out at the top with the slow improvement in understanding. And I hope make a bigger point that will be helpful to all mothers. The vast majority of the kids that we see are nonverbal or virtually nonverbal. They may speak, but their speech is 1 or 2 words, or it doesn't seem to relate to what's happening at that moment, so their speech doesn't seem logical or appropriate. And here's what I want to say. We human beings make the mistake over and over and over again with brain-injured children of thinking that their speech or lack of speech represents their thinking. In short, that if they're not speaking, they must not be thinking very much. If they're not speaking well, they must be thinking in a confused or upside down way. This mom says slow improvement in understanding, which tells me she thinks her child doesn't understand very well. Now, I've never laid eyes on this child, so I don't know this child. But I know many, many brain-injured children, and the vast majority of those children have very good understanding. They have very poor speech, but they have very good understanding. So here's the advice I would give to every parent who has been told perhaps over and over again, your child doesn't understand, or your child doesn't understand as well as he should, or you look at your child and he doesn't follow your instructions, he doesn't seem to be tuned in, so you've come to the conclusion he doesn't understand. I would say to all of you the same thing. Trust your kid. Bet on your kid. Talk to your child as if he understands everything. Talk to him the same way you talk to your husband or your wife. And here's why. He has everything to gain if you do so, and nothing to lose. If you do the opposite, which much of the world does, you talk to him very little, or you use baby talk or a simplified speech with him, or you simply assume he doesn't understand you when you're talking to him. If you do those things, he will be in a deprived environment. If we did those things to a well child, it would be deprivation. If he understands, as I propose he does, maybe everything, then you want to make sure he's in an environment that is rich in stimulation and opportunity, not deprived. And let's say he's that rare kid who at this moment doesn't understand much. He would never be hurt by being in a stimulating environment. So he has everything to gain and nothing to lose if you make sure that that environment, that everyone in his environment is talking to him every minute of the day as if he understands. As soon as this webinar finishes, go to him and say, son, I probably underestimated you. My apologies, but from this minute on, I'm going to be talking to you in a different way. And I'm going to be helping you to be able to communicate with me. It's so important. That single thing will change his life dramatically. Don't let anyone in his environment who treats him as if he's stupid, who treats him as if he doesn't understand. Now, having done that, the next big thing he needs is a way of communicating, because he can't communicate right now in a way that's convincing. Everyone, if you think his understanding isn't good, then if mom doesn't think he understands well, then that's pretty much going to be everybody. So you need to find simple, common sense ways of giving him the opportunity to communicate. I would simply start, if you haven't done so already, with giving him a choice of yes or no. Would you like some water right now? Yes or no? Now, you might be, if he has single words, you might be depending on his words for that. Those words might not be what he's actually thinking. Our kids are neurologically disorganized, so sometimes when they mean yes, they say no. And then they're infuriated and have a temper tantrum. So it's much more reliable to give him a choice, literally a choice. Yes, no. He looks here. Was that a yes? Yes or no? Yes, it was. Okay. So I confirm that I got the correct answer that he wanted to give me. You can use reading words to do this. You can use a simple choice board with, a white erasable board with 4 choices: hungry, thirsty, tired, other. It's always good to give a default. And then he can point, with your help, he can point to what his answer would be. All of a sudden, you're not in a guessing game. He's just pointed to tired. So you can say, okay, it's understandable. It's nap time anyway. Let's take a nap. So important. Even beginning with a simple choice board, you can then progress to more complicated choices. Did you like that book? Was it sophisticated, silly, too easy, other? Everything that you're doing with your child all day long, you can be asking those questions, and all of a sudden, he has a line of communication. All of a sudden, you're saying, gee, he understands all kind of many things that I never realized he understood. This mother asks, how can I speed up the process? And I've given ways to speed up the process, because just changing the environment and letting him know you understand him will speed up progress. Giving him a way of communicating will speed up progress. Any way that you're going to improve oxygenation for the brain will speed up the process. And those are the parts of the program that demand better breathing. Anytime we can improve oxygen to the brain, that's going to speed progress. Making sure you've eliminated from his diet foods that he may be sensitive to or intolerant of or allergic to, that's going to speed up the process. Having that clean air, clean water, that's going to speed up the process. So I hope that's helpful. My child has endless attraction for lights, fans. He switches on and off all fans. He starts them, he stops them. What can I do to help him out of this? Well, I like this question because it's emblematic of these kids. If we look at the typical child who is hyperactive, he has huge sensory problems. And he gets caught in kind of neurological circuits where he'll turn on fans off and on, he'll spin under a light bulb, he'll play with a piece of string. If you sat down right now with a piece of paper and you wrote down everything he does that drives you crazy, you're probably gonna have a list of 300 things. These are all symptoms of his injury to the brain, of his disorganization. And it's very important for us to not get distracted by those symptoms. Yes, it's not good to spin under a light bulb. It's not good to play with string all day. By the way, if he plays with string all day, take the string away. If he plays with his little red truck and takes it around the dining room table 400 times, take the little red truck away. Put him to work. Get him on a good program. Then he won't have time to get stuck in those circuits. And by the way, as we fix these kids, they often say to us, thank goodness my mother took away that little red truck. I used to be driven insane by taking that around the dining room table 400 times. The day my mother took that away was one of the best days of my life. So the things he looks like he adores, these circuits he's trapped in, he does not adore. So yes, there are a million symptoms. Yes, they're irritating, repetitive. They'll drive you and I crazy. But when we get him on a good program, first of all, he doesn't have time to do them anymore. And, we'll say to mom, gee, didn't he used to run around and turn the fans on and off all the time and drive you? And mom will say, yeah. We'll say, we don't see that in the history. Did that stop? And mother will get a very odd look on her face and say, oh my goodness, I haven't seen him do that in months and months and months. And we'll say, well, when did that stop? And mother will say, you know what? I don't know. Because when these very irritating symptoms of neurological disorganization disappear, mother moves right on to what's the next thing. And that's right. That's why our mothers get the results they do. They keep moving to say, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? But these symptoms, they will dissipate. They will disappear. We just have to do the things that are going to make that brain much happier. I hope that helps. Mother says, my child is unwell health-wise most of the time. His stomach is always upset. Any advice on nutrition? Well, we have a lot of advice on nutrition. First of all, many kids who come here are chronically ill. They're ill more days than they're well. And I'm happy to say we have a very good track record in fixing this. First of all, if your child has stomach ache a lot of the time, here's the checklist we'd start looking at. First of all, I check for parasites. Parasites are a big problem for kids. And, you can check the blood, you can check the stool, but I would certainly immediately ask the question, does this child have parasites? Our kids have a good bit of problem in the gut, and often they have gas and distension, and this creates pain and problems. Be very careful about how you cook your child's food. If you're going to give complex carbohydrate, brown rice, amaranth, barley, we wouldn't give wheat, of course, to this child, so we would be taking wheat out of that equation. Any of those whole grains that can be highly nutritious, you want to make sure that they're being cooked very completely. The modern mother is sometimes fooled into using a pressure cooker, then throwing it all in the blender, and then because it's been blended in a high-power blender, there's the illusion that it's cooked. Here's what we recommend. If you are going to feed beans or complex carbohydrate of any kind to your child, soak the grains and soak the beans for at least 4 hours. Discard the water and then put them in a slow cooker with a lot of water. Cook them for at least 10 hours overnight so that when they come out in the morning, you can easily mash them with a fork. Many kids, as soon as the whole grains and the beans are cooked in this way, they can absorb the food and get the nutrient. Now, some others will say, well, gee, if I cook it that much, it's going to lose nutrient. You're not really feeding beans and whole grains so much for vitamins. You're feeding them for calories. And they won't lose calories. They won't lose minerals. You're going to use fresh vegetables for the minerals also and for vitamins. So those things you're going to cook very lightly. Steam those very lightly and add them at the end. But one of the reasons our kids have so much gas and upset is that the food that they're eating is not cooked enough. Of course, You want to look and make sure they're not foods that you're feeding your child that are creating upset. Our hit list: number 1, wheat; number 2, dairy; number 3, soy; 4, banana; 5, citrus; 7, peanuts; 8, tomatoes. These would be the foods that are most likely to be causing a problem. And when a child comes here, we simply take a child off all those things. And then, once we've got him healthy, we can add back the ones that we think are not really a big problem one by one. We would never add back wheat, we would never add back dairy, and we would never add back the corn. Others of those things depends on the individual child, but that could help you a lot. Another thing you might look at in your child's diet is how much fruit he's getting. Fresh, organic fruit is a very nutritious food. But many kids come to us and they have an overgrowth of yeast or bacteria in the gut. And unfortunately, the bad bacteria love the simple carbohydrate. They love the fruit. So for the first 6 months or 8 months, we may actually take a child off of all fruit just to starve out the bad bacteria. And this makes a big difference. It's sad because, of course, we all love the fruit. When we put a child back on fruit, we will only use the low glycemic fruits. The berries and the low glycemic things will avoid the high glycemic fruit because, again, it has a lot of sugar and the bad bacteria love that sugar. Well, there are a lot of other things we could say about nutrition, but those are just a kind of beginning place for you. This mother asks, my child always wants to drink water. Is that bad? And no, it is not bad. The best fluid for your child to drink is water. You wouldn't believe how many kids we see who don't drink water. They've never drunk any water. They come here and they've been drinking juice. Well, what we call juice, but most of the juice that children drink these days is not really juice. It comes from a can or a bottle or a carton, and it is, in fact, by the time it gets to them, sugar water, just masquerading as juice. So we would only feed our kids pure water or a freshly squeezed juice, squeezing it right then, feeding it right then. So your child's doing the right thing. He's drinking water. Just make sure that that water is pure and clean, the very cleanest water that you can provide for him. And, of course, you don't want him to drink too little or too much. And that varies, but again, if you're feeding a lot of salty or sugared foods, then the fluid intake may be way too high. We would take the salt and the sugar out of the food, and then you'll see that fluid intake drop naturally because you don't need so much if you're not eating a lot of salty food. My child always coughs, usually wet coughs. Any suggestion? Well, this could be a symptom of probably dozens and dozens and dozens of things. First of all, you do need to have a good doctor. You can't be your child's doctor. It's not a good thing. So if you don't have a doctor who you like and you trust, better find a doctor who you like and you trust. There are very good young doctors out there, and our mothers, we say to our mothers, you got to find a doctor who trusts you and who you trust, who you're willing to tell the truth. Don't have a doctor who you're going to tell him fibs. You got to have a doctor who you're going to say, this is what I do, this is what I don't do, and that he'll back you up, because every kid needs to have a good doctor. So if your child has a chronic cough, you might need to take them to the doctor. Second, you should be aware that a lot of brain injured children have allergies, and those allergies end up being mistaken for bacterial infections or viral infections. So they end up being treated as if they have a cold all the time. So they're either given antihistamines and treated symptomatically, or they may even be given antibiotics over and over again, when in fact they have neither a viral bacteria, or a viral infection or a bacterial infection. They are allergic to something in their environment, and the symptom of that allergy might be a runny nose, might be a chronic cough. So one of the things you might look around in your environment, and the first thing I'd look at is mold and mildew. Mold and mildew are very toxic, and they're toxic to all of us. So look around your house, sniff in every cupboard, because if there's one place in your house that has mold or mildew, the spores are everywhere, and they may be affecting your child. So that's some place you could look at. Look at your child's bedding. Does he have a clean new mattress? Does he have a clean new pillow? Everything that he's sleeping in, is it able to be washed? That may change this situation. Is the air clean? Is the water clean, as we already talked about? That makes a big difference. This mother asks, we are on a raw diet for quite some time. Does the Institute support a raw diet for autistic kids? Well, I think by now we're all sophisticated enough to know that raw fruit and raw vegetables are arguably the most natural diet. And we know that they have the greatest amount of nutrient. That said, we do have to recognize that hurt kids are not well adults, and sometimes raw food can be hard on a gut that's not working very well. So for some of our kids, we move them to a more raw diet as we see that they have that improved gut function. But for some of our kids, we have to start with cooked food and move there more gradually. So it really depends on the child. Ideally, yeah, it would be great if all of our kids could be eating raw food. Another aspect of raw food is making sure that it is really organic and it is really clean, because even organic food needs to be washed very carefully. Organic food still has rodents running across it and comes from soil that has parasites. So the cleaning process for raw food is critical. And some of the kids we see, they come from cultures where human waste is used as fertilizer. Insecticides are used that are very hard to get off the food. So again, the raw food has to be very, very carefully cleaned. Using a good natural soap, or maybe an ozone cleaner. There are many ways to clean vegetables. Mother says, I read the book, What to Do About Your Brain Injured Child, and I'm really motivated to do the program. My son is 8 years old and nonverbal. Our biggest concerns are his receptive language, expressive language, and articulation. Well, again, this would be the description of a very typical brain injured child. And yes, there's nothing we want more than speech. And certainly if the kid gets to vote, it's probably the top of his list too. But clear, beautiful speech is the result of a child who is neurologically organized, who has good, regular, mature, deep breathing, and who is getting very good oxygenation. So to get that result that you're looking for, there's a pathway that would include making a much better respiratory system, providing oxygen enrichment, providing that good diet as part of that, enrichment, and a physical program that's going to help this child really build that respiratory system. So, yeah, those are good goals, but there's a pathway to get there. This mom says, my son is 23 years old, diagnosed with autism, and he keeps repeating the sentences in spite of our answering him. How do we stop him doing this? And this would go back to what I said earlier about writing down the 300 things that your kid does every day that drives you crazy. Again, this young man who probably does drive his family a little crazy, asking them the same question over and over again. If we make a cleaner environment for him, if we take the foods out of his diet that he's probably quite sensitive to, we will start to see a big change in repetitive behavior. It is very seductive when a kid is asking the same question over and over again to simply think you can answer the question and that will solve the problem. He's really not asking that question again and again because he wants to. We're really looking at a kid whose central nervous system is so irritated, whose gut is so irritated that, again, if you and I had the same situation, we'd be doing exactly the same thing. So for this adult, he's lived with this 23 years. I would move heaven and earth to do everything we talked about in terms of nutrition and the environment. And I would immediately say to him, we know you understand. We know you're trapped in a very, very difficult situation. And we're going to give you ways to communicate with us so you can tell us what you need, so you can tell us what you want. I would certainly supply a sophisticated choice board to this young man so he can tell you what he really is thinking. And then he needs a big program. He needs a good intellectual program. He needs a good physical program. But I would start with all the things we've talked about to make that environment better. And you may see a major change. Just taking out wheat and dairy, you may bring about a very significant change for him. And if he's getting any junk food, and I would say it's highly likely with an adult that he is getting too much salt, too much sugar, junk foods that he shouldn't have, take those out, and all of a sudden the central nervous system is going to be much less irritated. Well, this mom says that she began a good program. She's attended the What to Do course, but she's kind of struggling because she needs 3 people to do a good pattern. And she's not quite sure how to run a perfect program if she can't get the help she needs. Of course, I don't have any way of helping you get a patterner, but I think this, you know, everybody has some part of the program that may be a struggle or may be difficult for them to do. My advice to you, since you have attended the course, you have a very complete picture of what a full program would be like. My advice to you is to take everything you can do and do it as completely and fully as you can to the best of your ability. And if that includes some patterning, that's great. And if for some reason you can't do it in a high quality way because you don't have enough hands to do it, then you can't. And you need to go full steam ahead with what you can do and do it with all your energy and all your enthusiasm so that you can get the very best result. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have. Do you have more questions for me? Okay, great. Morgan has some more for me.
One mother asks, what about tea instead of water?
Mom asks about other fluids beside water, and tea comes up. Now, tea has a very broad definition. If we're talking about real tea that has caffeine, we would never give caffeine to our kids. So if you're talking more about herbal teas, well, these vary too. Some of them have strong medicinal detoxifying effects. And again, we think of them as healthy, but you don't want your child on a detox tea every day. It's not good for our kids to be detoxing every day. That puts a load on the liver. So you want to look at the tea and see what is the quality of that. Is it a medicinal tea with strong ability to detox the body? Is it a more benign thing where it's not really doing that in the body? Again, water is the best. Fresh juice in moderation, made on the spot, is okay. And mild herbal teas that are not detoxing the body could be okay as well.
Another father asks, what do you suggest about probiotics?
Father asks about probiotics. Well, I think there is no question that everything we can do to support the gut, everything, is important. And replacing good bacteria, adding good bacteria by using probiotics can be very helpful. Now, not all probiotics are the same. Every probiotic, all the good ones, each one adds a little something that another one doesn't have. So do a little homework about which probiotic. Most high quality probiotics must be refrigerated. If they're not, then you're going to lose the value. The tricky part of the probiotic is actually getting it to the gut where it can do some good without it being destroyed. So we recommend, if you're giving a probiotic, to give it in the last bite of food in the meal rather than in the beginning of the meal. So hopefully it can ride along with the food and arrive safely and do some good. We also recommend rotating probiotics. So maybe choose not one or two, but 3 different probiotics, and then rotate them because they'll each offer something different, and that would be helpful to your child. Probiotics are particularly important for children who have been on antibiotics off and on. Many hurt kids, when they come here, have spent their lives on antibiotics. So we have a lot of heavy lifting to do to rebuild the good bacteria in the gut. So yes, we'd definitely use probiotics.
Another one is, what air filters do you suggest to use, like brands?
Well, when it comes to air filters and water filters, you go up on the internet and it's kind of mind-boggling what's up there. We are still recommending the HEPA filtration air filters. That's the hospital technology. And you'll see a lot of different companies that make the HEPA. So it just really depends on what's available in your country and what's affordable for you. This technology is expensive, no question about it. I was very shocked recently to see what a new filter was going to cost. But I had to ask myself the question, would I rather have my mother's 92-year-old lungs filtering the air or the air filter? And it was really not a big decision in the end. So I think you have to go and look and see what's available. Water is a little more complicated because everybody's water is different. In most cities in the world, or many cities, the city itself will tell you what are the challenges of the water. So the city of Philadelphia has very different water than the city of New York. Philadelphia has probably among the worst waters in the United States. The city of New York has beautiful spring water that comes down from the Adirondacks. So you're getting probably the best water in the United States in the city of New York. So every city is different. And you have to choose water filtration systems that match the problems that you have. Here in Philadelphia, the government puts fluoride in the water. So to take that out of the water, and of course we want to because it's toxic, is very expensive. So I'm forced to buy much more expensive technology here in Philadelphia than I would if I were living in New York. So you have to find out what's in your water and then what water filtration systems are available. But again, if you go up and look on the internet, you're going to find many, many choices.
One father asks about enzyme supplements. Is there anything, do you suggest them at all, or do you think they're not worth it?
Supplementation is very individual. And yes, we do use supplements with our kids. We dream of a day that food is in much better shape than it is right now, and we won't have to use supplements. Supplements are always second best to Mother Nature. And yes, some children, we do use enzymes, but it is an individual question, and it isn't something where we would automatically put a kid on enzymes. It would be an individual decision based on what we see in the blood work or the urine or the stool. We would make that decision.
One father asks about chewing. His son likes to chew everything.
Well, you know, when your child is putting things in the mouth, chewing everything, again, you might want to just start by looking into parasites to see if there's any issue there. First of all, a kid who's chewing on everything is likely to have parasites because they're always picking up stuff and chewing them. So I would certainly look into that. And again, it would go back to those 300 things that you'd put on your list that drive you crazy. As you put your child on a program, as your child has a routine and does that routine every day, there's less and less opportunity to do some of the things that he has now become habituated to doing. And it kind of starts to break those habits a little bit.
One mother says she has a 17-month-old and son, and he screams. He screams for everything. When he's happy, when he's sad, he's angry. How can I help him stop?
You know, this mom who says her child is just screaming as a form of communication, basically. Happiness, sadness, frustration. I think, again, I have to say, the most important thing is to get into communication with this kid. I would take a piece of paper and say, son, I want to help you, but I got to find out why you're screaming. You know, and then you start the detective work. Are you screaming because you have pain in your belly? Your ears hurt? Just start with every possibility you can think and have your child, give your child the opportunity to choose. What's the answer to that question? You have to begin with your child. You have to have him tell you what's going on. But that won't happen unless you ask. And you have to ask it in the respectful way that you're going to pay attention to the answers. Because often people look at a 17-month-old who's screaming all the time and they just say, oh, well, he's 17 months old. He doesn't understand. He's out of control. He's badly behaved. And we don't believe any of that. There's a reason when hurt kids do things, no matter what it is they're doing, no matter how crazy it seems, no matter how irritating, how upsetting, how devastating it may be in the household, there's a reason. And you need to find out the reason. Don't let the sun set on your household until you find out what's making him scream. Why is he screaming? And yes, mother may say, well, I can't ask him. He's screaming all the time. Ignore the screaming. Whisper in his ear. Say, son, I'm going to help you. But you must teach me what's making you scream so we can help you. Is it sounds that make you scream? Is it pain that makes you scream? Start the process. Give him choices. Pay attention. Because he's in trouble right now. And there's no bigger indication than that than he's screaming. So find out why. Why? And by the way, when you find out why, write and tell us. I'd like to know.
And the last one is a father asks, they live in Florida, so they swim a lot. And chlorine can be an issue. Is salt chlorine generator okay?
Father's asking about swimming and chlorine in the pool, and he's absolutely right to be concerned about chlorine. For some of our kids, it's a big enough problem that we don't put them in pools that have chlorine. So for some of our children, we just don't. Now they do have salt filtration, and that's a huge improvement. So if you have the choice of a pool that has chlorine or salt filtration, yes, salt is far, far, far superior. But for some of our kids, if they get into that chlorinated pool, they're going to have ear infections, they're going to have tonsillitis, they're going to have frequent urination, hyperactivity, all kinds of problems. So now other kids, they're going to be in the pool. If we up their vitamin C, make sure that they're detoxing well, then they can handle it. But it depends on the kid. Well, I thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And I hope for those of you who we didn't get to all your questions, you'll write them, and we'll certainly come back in the future and do this again.